Welcome to Faith at Work, the podcast where we inspire and equip professionals to live out their Christian faith in the workforce. Whether you're navigating leadership, balancing work-life challenges, or looking to make a deeper impact, we're here to equip and guide you on how to bring your faith into work. Now here's your host, the director of the Unity Foundation in Alexandria, Minnesota, Kelsi Timm.
Today's conversation centers on leadership, specifically what it means to lead with care, clarity, and conviction when the work is difficult and the decisions matter. I'm joined today by Jessie Hjelle. She's the Director of Human Resources at Alexandria Public Schools. Jessie brings experience from both corporate HR and public education, along with a leadership philosophy rooted in servant leadership, accountability, and genuine care for people. This conversation focuses on doing the hard things, building healthy culture, and allowing faith to guide how we lead, make decisions, and serve others at work. And I am also lucky enough to call you friend. So
thank you, Kels.
Yes, I'm
Likewise.
so excited to have this conversation, and I honestly think it's really timely for the body of Christ. And I know the umbrella of this conversation is faith at work, but I have a feeling that people are going to be able to pull nuggets and apply it also to like other areas of their life around this conversation. Mm-hmm. So thank you for saying yes.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Well, we're going to just jump right into this. And the first question is, you've worked across corporate HR and now you're in public education. How has your leadership journey shaped the way you live out your faith at work today?
That's a good question. As I was reflecting a little bit on it, I was thinking about how really my faith was cultivated in the workplace and really just that it's always been part of my workday, just from the early days when, I had a corporate chaplain by my side and we just really got to come around and care for people. But I think by nature, I am a nurturer. Mm-hmm. And so I think that allows me to actually put people first and put the human in human resources. Yeah. So I think when you look at it as a whole and your faith and the different tenets and components of where you live that out, whether it be in your friendships or relationships, I think work is just another component, and how you do that may look a little bit differently depending on where you work. But regardless, like you can't like shut it off when you walk in the doors at work. I don't think, if you're living in true, genuine, authentic faith.
Yeah, I would agree with you. In your leadership portrait, and so for those who are like, what is a leadership portrait? Do you want to just share a quick backstory of how you arrived to this leadership portrait?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to have been through several rounds of servant leadership training with Mark Dieterding. He's a local leader here in our community. And really, it's just framing up like who you are, what your mission statement is, what your core values are, what are your beliefs about leading, even framing up like who's influenced your leadership. And so it's really like bringing that together in one document or PowerPoint or however you want to look. But then it's really about you reflecting on who you want to be as a leader. And it really is there intending to help guide you in that journry. Yeah. And so it's a document that I have. Mine happens to be in a PowerPoint, but there's no right or way wrong to do it. It's just really to help lead and guide you in kind of putting that stake in the ground to say, this is what kind of leader I want to be.
Right. It's kind of like your filter.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So with that, you reference servant leadership and the impact of both strong and poor leaders. So how did those experiences clarify the kind of leader you strive to be?
Well, I think we can all think of a leader that didn't treat you the way you thought you deserved to be treated, or maybe micromanaged you, or didn't lay out expectations, or so you look at them and you say, I do not want to be that kind of leader. Mm-hmm. I think those people actually influence what kind of leader you end up being, as just as much as the leaders you aspire to be. Somebody who leads with love, leads with care, sets clear expectations. You have a clear mission. You know where you're going. You have the tools and resources you need. And so I think from both, I've had both very strong, and I've worked under leaders who, were not strong. And I actually just referenced a memory that I had of the other day of a poor leader. And it's one of the reasons why I believe in flexibility. And I believe that we should, I think of the example happened to be like denying, paid time off for my son's first birthday. Like, it's a big moment in a mom's life. And my leader at the time said, well, no, you can't, I can't guarantee you that day off. And it was just because he had other commitments. And so I remember feeling like, really? Like, I can't have my son's first birthday off. And so I take that with me. And so anytime there's an exception need to be made or something like that, it's like, would I want to be told no in this situation? And so I keep coming back to examples of somebody who maybe went the times you were treated unfairly.
You wrote in your leadership portrait, sometimes doing the right thing means doing the hard thing. Why is that especially true in HR and leadership?
Yeah, one of my mottos, especially in the workplace, but in life in general, is do hard thing. You can do hard things or do the hard things. And I think it's because we're constantly facing hard things, hard challenges. And in leadership, like we're the ones who are really looked at to try to figure out, how are we going to get across this challenge? How are we going to overcome this challenge? What are these barriers? But I think if you look at budgets and right sizing, reducing staff, addressing underperformance, all of those things, like, they are the right things to do. Mm-hmm. And strong leaders will do them, and we'll get the job done, but not everybody does them with maybe the love and the care that they need to, and treating people as human beings throughout that process. So I think when I look through my lens, at least, it's like, how can you deliver a hard message, but still treat people like people, and still deliver the message with care, even when it's unpopular? Because I think in HR, especially in leadership, you're not going to be everybody's friend.
Right.
And so I think, but if you can treat people with dignity and respect, it does go a long way in those challenging times.
Well, I think we'll probably get to this, but I think when we have procedures and processes in place, that if you're having to deliver a hard conversation to somebody, maybe it's you're letting them go. Hopefully there should have been signs along the way, like, hey, we need to come alongside you, and this needs to get better. You know what I mean? But I can see where if somebody feels blindsided because nobody ever told them, and then they get let go. So what I'm hearing you say is that that's probably something that you're doing. The hard things, even when stuff comes up, you address it, and then you keep moving forward. And then sometimes you do have to make that hard decision.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I think nobody should ever be fired or let go from a job and have it be a surprise. I mean, now some people may choose to deny what reality, even, previous conversations may not sink in, but I think communication especially is a big part. I think communication is a huge part of my job, but as leaders, setting the stage, even for, hey, our company, this is profit, this is revenue, and we're looking at this, to set the stage for, we have to right size. You don't want to put people in panic, but you also want to lead with transparency. And so there's a delicate balance between delivering message of fear and being in reality, because it can impact culture when you're delivering, really hard news, and then nothing's really happening and everybody's getting really anxious about, oh, is a bomb going to drop, or am I going to have a job tomorrow? You don't want to cultivate that kind of culture, but right. So it is really just, it takes a lot to kind of critique that. And I think leaders learn over experiences. I think if you talk to other leaders in the community who have gone through hard times of maybe right-sizing companies and, having staff workforce reductions, I think they would all say, well, here's what I would do different next time. But I think if you can, when you're delivering it, especially, is just having people in mind.
Right.
Even when it's about numbers is really important because we can focus so much on the numbers that we forget about the people.
Right. And it's people's livelihood.
Right.
You know, I've been a part of 2 situations where I was working at a business and then it got bought out, and I didn't know that my job was going to be eliminated, but that was the decision they made. And so I was let go like right away after they bought the company. And then I was a part of another company, but they gave you much more of a heads up. There was a longer transitioning, so you could start looking for work, knowing that your job was going to be eliminated. And, you know, when we're pursuing Jesus in our careers, it works out, right? But I definitely I preferred option B with kind of like that heads, if you can. I know that's not always the case in all situations, but at least then you can start thinking and planning and looking ahead to the future.
Exactly.
And praying about it, right? So, Jessie, conflict is unavoidable in any organization. How can leaders of faith engage conflict honestly and respectfully without avoiding hard conversations or escalating tension? And before you answer, this is where we need all the people pleasers to listen up.
Yeah, I think there is a way to deliver. I don't know. I don't know if I have the answer to this question, but I think there is going to be conflict, and how we respond will tell us a lot about where our heart is at. I do think sometimes you really, sometimes it can be a process for, like, you know, if you're getting escalated or feeling mad about a conflict that occurred, and you need to step away and take a minute to get your heart right or to get your mind right. But I think communication is really big here, because we can, I think if we listen, let me back up a minute. I think listening is probably key in the conflict. What is the other party saying? Like what are they asking for, and how, and so if you can actively listen without forming your responses, I think that's a great way, especially as tension is arising, but it's not always going to be reciprocated. So you're not always going to, the other party isn't always going to want to listen to what you have to say. And so I think doing it respectfully is helpful.
Do you have any examples of maybe where this went well? And I understand you have HIPAA and all of that. And so like a generalized example, or have you learned phrases to say when you're trying to, you know, so I think of conflict where I'm coming in wanting to assume the best of people, coming to seek understand versus right and wrong, you know, because I think that's where, when we're coming in with like, I have to be right, we're going to get more of a reaction versus a response, right? So our heart posture is really important, especially in conflict. And this is somebody who avoided conflict to all costs. Like I would rather not say anything because I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. But I'm just wondering, through all of your training and working in HR, I have to believe you've had some hard conversations in the last 20 plus years. And so have you found phrases that seem to maybe de-escalate situations or help people, how do I want to say that? Or they can just feel like you're coming in to understand versus like, I'm right, you're wrong?
Oh yeah. I definitely think when people feel heard or listened to, you're going to de-escalate and the tension is going to decrease. I think if you're coming in with a combative and just to prove your point, I think the trick is though, when you're listening and you still, and you still have maybe an argument on your side, I think how you articulate that is important. So I'm trying to think of an example here. I've had plenty of conflict in throughout my career. I think, you know, like I think of conflict in a team. Okay. So the he said, she said, and really trying to like come in and find out what is going on at the heart of the conversation. And so I think of a recent conversation with an employee, and, you know, they're feeling picked on, and they're feeling, you know, they're feeling targeted or constantly criticized, and people why am I getting singled out for not doing my job right? I think I'm doing a good job. And I just paused and I just said, can I ask you, like, how do you like to receive feedback? Like, what would it, like, if you were doing something maybe, and you needed to be like, maybe not course corrected, but guided differently as you were fulfilling out your workday, what would that look like? You know, and just because I was like, well, if feedback, any sort of feedback is coming at this person as criticism, what would positive feedback or redirection needed? And so I was just honestly curious, like, what would that look like to that person? They couldn't articulate it well, but I think at that point, perhaps that person was feeling maybe that I was hearing that they were feeling picked on or singled out. And so I think being curious is a big part of when there's conflict. Like, tell me more about why you feel like that. And then asking a lot of questions around, like, okay, just to make sure I understand. I do that a lot, especially when we're meeting with employees and you're getting two sides of stories. It's like, okay, so can I just frame up what I think I'm hearing and just to make sure I understand what happened? So a lot of that, I think, also de-escalates because people are like, okay, she's really in here to like hear and understand. And now she gets what I'm saying. It might not change the outcome, but at least the person knows that you care.
Right. Well, I'm thinking of Matthew 6, right? As believers, if we have an offense with a brother or sister, we're supposed to go directly to them first. And then if you can't get things worked out, then you bring another person. And if then you still can't, then you bring two more, right? And so I think that's a great reference for people that have conflict at work. First, just go to the person and be like, you know, maybe you feel offended or hurt and stay curious. Like, what did you mean by that? Like, help me understand your response to this situation. And then if you can't get it resolved, then follow that pattern. But I think of, you know, where things blow up really big. Do people start there? Do you go back to the person that you feel hurt or offended by first? Or do we start to gossip and build a case against them and try to get other people on your side? And then there's this big division, right? But if we could have the courage enough to go to the person, I think maybe some of that could be avoided. And granted, that's different because you're in the HR role. Right. But to equip people on teams to like, this is the model that we do here, you know?
Absolutely. I think that I'm a big proponent of going to the source and starting, you know, like, have you told this person that you get frustrated when they do this? Or, you know, have you explained, you know, have you had that dialogue together yet? And typically the answer is no. And so then to come in and try to solve a problem when it's a he said, she said is really difficult. And so encouraging those people to go to the source, their brother or sister, and have that dialogue, I think is key. And it won't always go well.
Right.
But then it won't. Sometimes it might. And sometimes you might be surprised, like, oh, I didn't mean anything by it. I was in a huge hurry and I just knew we had to get X, Y, and Z done. And so I was just telling you to go do that. Like, I didn't mean anything by it. And sometimes I think people's own internal wounds and what they carry, honestly, their own shame will plays into their relationships in the workplace. Right.
And that's the filter that they're hearing things through.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. When I think of too, like, you have a really hard job, Jessie, because you're coming in, especially like you've always worked at, I shouldn't say always, but I think you've always worked at really large companies. And so each person has grown up in a different home with different experiences. And when we talk about conflict, it's been modeled however many employees way, let's say you have 400 employees, 400 different ways of how conflict is modeled out in a home, you know, through their childhood. And then we all get to decide how we're going to do things. But I would say in most cases, maybe that's not a fair statement. I'll just speak of my experience. Conflict wasn't modeled well growing up in my home. So therefore, I had a lot of fear around conflict. And so I avoided it, which isn't healthy. And so I think of that times 400, right? So because I wanted to learn how to do conflict better, I took courses, I read books, I talked to people that I thought were healthy and I could see the fruit, like how their kids are, like, how did you do conflict, in your home? So I think it's really important that we all take accountability and responsibility to do better. And if there's a pattern of us in conflict, and maybe we're the common denominator, it's that, okay, there's an opportunity to learn and grow here. And maybe I need to do some therapy, or maybe I need to read books. Because I think conflict is something we're never going to avoid. And I talked about this in my interview with Alicia, but I just finished this book called Crushing Chaos. And it goes back to God's design. And God never used the word perfect. He used the word good. And so when you break down the Greek and the Hebrew, and when he created the world, it was formless and void. He actually brought order to the world that was chaotic. And Adam and Eve's job was to subdue and multiply the wilderness. And Adam was the dust of the wilderness is what created him. It wasn't the dust from the garden. And so we know there's always going to be chaos in our life. And so as believers, we're called to bring order to that. And so we need tools. You're not just born with knowing how to bring order into situations, but that's with conflict. It's learning how to bring order into that. And so that's a little tangent there for you, but I just think it's so important that we take responsibility. And if it wasn't modeled well, or maybe it's an area we struggle in, then we need to do better. Read books, do some therapy, talk to your HR director and say, hey, how can I grow in this area?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'd have great resources for people. Maybe, maybe not. Accountability often gets a bad reputation. How do you approach accountability in a way that is both clear and compassionate?
So accountability is a big one for me. I think holding people accountable is necessary, especially in the workplace and even in personal life. I mean, people need to be accountable for their actions and the words they speak and how they present themselves. I think high levels of accountability also create a culture of trust and a culture where you can be flexible. So, and a culture where you can just be transparent. And so I think of accountability and I think of deadlines and tasks and what do you need to get done? Like what is your job and how do you go about performing it? How do you get the job done in a way like having some sort of like a self-starter or like some internal motivation, if you will, to actually want to do a good job. There are people in the world that want to show up to work and do as little as possible. The fortunate thing is those are the few, right?
Right.
The many are the ones who want to come. They actually want to do a good job. So many people pour their heart and souls into their career, their work. And so, but I think when we can hold people accountable, when we can have established guidelines and this is what we expect, but I think without setting expectations, it's hard to have accountability.
Right.
So setting expectations is huge. What do you expect from people? And then do they have the tools and resources they need to do their job? And if they can be accountable to their work on their own, then that actually takes the pressure off of you as a leader to really be micromanaging or running such a tight ship because people are doing it on their own. I think the majority of professionals in today's world are probably performing above and beyond. But again, there are a few that actually want to show up and do as little as possible. And so those are the people that really probably need the most attention and take up most of the time.
Yeah.
But I think you can establish accountability without feeling like you are
like heavy-handed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a good word for it. Like you can establish that just even by setting expectations, timelines, project plans. What do you expect from your team members? What does it look like when you participate in meetings and things like that? Like, are you expecting everybody to participate? And so I think expectations is a big part of accountability.
And I would add to that, I think accountability is a gift and that we all need it.
Yes.
And I would say that definitely, obviously, in the work life, but then we need accountability outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of it as like that's part of our sanctification process. And when people do say, hey, Kelsi, like I see this in your life and this is an area you need to grow in, like that is a gift that somebody cares enough about me and sees my potential and seeing this blind spot and wanting me to do better. So I think if people can reframe the word accountability and seeing it more as a gift and an opportunity versus something negative.
Right. If you have the people who can speak truth and love into you,
Yes.
that is a gift. And you want those people who hold you accountable on a personal level. I know I'm surrounded by and have friendships that will do that for me. You're one of them.
I was going to say, so are you.
And so it is nice to be called out.
Mm-hmm.
Not to even be called out, but to be called up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Higher.
It doesn't feel good in the moment.
Yeah.
But like when you said, when it's coming from a place that you know somebody genuinely loves and cares for you, you can receive it so much better versus somebody that you don't have a relationship with.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. So I think I think the high trust relationships, it's easier to do that with.
Yeah. Well, and I was also thinking too, like when you were talking about deadlines and expectations and how important it is for as leaders that we need to be approachable and to make sure that's really clear on your team that if you have questions, like, you know, I'm sure there's some sort of order, like with like levels of managers and whatnot, but to like go to those people and you don't have to figure it out on your own. Like, yes, there is a point where you need to like learn how to problem solve, but I think that part builds trust too. So then when somebody has to maybe correct you, you can receive it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think just as you said, problem solve, I think creating a culture where people are bringing you problems with potential solutions. So here's a problem that I learned that early on in my career. I reported to the president of the company, and I would walk into his office and be like, I'm not sure what to do. And we have this big problem. And he's like, well, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't planning on thinking. I was planning on having you think for me. And like, and he just really like groomed me into, well, here's the problem now. And here's a couple of solutions I was already thinking about. Mm-hmm. And that was huge because that was early on in my career. And I think that I've been able to hopefully carry that with me, that I'm not just raising my hands at all these problems, but I'm like, hey, we got a big one to figure out, but I think we can do it. And here's what I'm thinking. Let's collaborate and reach a solution.
Right. Well, and to bring Jesus into that, like this is a great way to start to learn how to bring Jesus into your workday. You have a problem. Mm-hmm. He's got solutions. Mm-hmm. And so it's learning to pray and ask God, like, Lord, show me your heart on this, or give me your wisdom and discernment right now. Because I can't see the whole picture. I don't know if that's been part of your journey, but when that's been a part of my journey where I really learned how to partner with his, like learning how to hear his voice and then going to him throughout the day. And granted, I ran an in-home daycare for 10 years, but there were moments where it was just utter chaos. I have 12 kids in my home. And I remember praying like, Lord, help. Like I need to bring order back into my home. And I can tell you, like, I think it was almost every single time immediately an idea would pop in my head. And it was exactly what the kids needed. It was usually like some sort of game or something I needed to say. And it would just like diffuse a situation. And so in that season of my life is really when I learned how to partner with God's voice.
Yeah, because there's nothing too big or too small that he doesn't care about that we can't go to him with. And I think I probably didn't think that much about that early on in my career. Like, oh, well, I could bring this to the Lord. But there are big things that we face nowadays. And I think, yeah, I can't do it on my own. So a lot of times I'll feel overwhelmed. And that's when I'm like, okay, Lord, what do I need to focus on today in this moment? You know, just even taking a minute to just breathe and say, I'm heading into this meeting, or I'm running here, and I just need you to be with me because I'm not prepared because I didn't have time, that type of thing. And so I think you're right. Bringing him with you is big. He should come with you. He shouldn't be cut off the minute you walk into your office, you know, in the morning. You should constantly be relying on him because he cares and he will give you those ideas to combat your chaos.
Yes, he will.
As you put it. Yeah.
You talk about empowering people and placing them where they can reach their maximum potential. What does empowerment look like in practice, not just in theory?
Ooh, yeah. So empowering people, I think, first off, you need to hire people that you trust and then trust the people that you hire.
Ooh, that's good. Say that again.
I didn't come up with it.
Okay,
So that's
really
a Dan
good.
Malmstrom quote back from
Okay.
Douglas Scientific. But he would say, hire the people you trust and then trust the people you hire. And it's kind of like taking everybody's gifts and talents and really capitalizing on them. And so finding out what people are good at, getting them in the right seats on the bus, and then letting them, like, really giving them the freedom to go figure it out on their own. They might stumble, they might fall. You can be there for support. But we, as a young startup company in Douglas Scientific, that was a key because we didn't have the time to. We had to bring people in and we had to trust that they could do what they said they could do. And then we had to let them fail fast and try again. And how can we do this different? And so it was a really exciting time of really watching people reach their maximum potential because we were kind of just letting them run free. So I think sometimes when you're so contained and you have a job that's maybe not as, you can't be as creative or you can't make it, probably creative is the right term. You can't be so creative in your position and bring your little touch on everything. There are positions that you really can't do that with, but in some of those positions where you do have the freedom and it could look this way, it could look that way, it really just letting people be their best selves and their true selves. But you can't just do that with everybody. I think you have to cultivate the culture first.
Definitely.
And you have to be okay with failure. And some organizations, they just don't have room for that. So I get that, depending on the role or like the important work that they're doing. And maybe they're in a lab or something like that. There's not a lot of room for failure,
right. Yep.
But I think when people truly feel like if you can find things that people are excited about, and they get some energy and you just let them go and you let them figure it out and you let them take the lead, they're going to come alive and they're really going to thrive. Now you can give your guidance or suggestions, but just to let them take the wheel. It's fun when you're in an environment like that.
It is really fun. I had a job where my boss was like that, and it was like how he created the team and he trusted each person in their role. And then that just the synergy, because we all trusted each other and we each brought a different gift to the table. It was so fun. Like I really looked forward going to work and being a part of that team because of that. And there was still accountability. Like if we tried something and it didn't work, it's like, okay, well, what did we learn? How are we going to do this differently so we don't repeat that pattern? But then go do the next thing. So, and I'm a creative person. I was thinking of when you were saying some jobs don't allow for that, like healthcare, maybe you can have creativity and like process and procedure, but like caring for people and like you said, lab work or I think of like people that work with numbers, finance and accounting. That's a little bit different. And I think our brains are wired differently. And so I'm so thankful for people in the medical and accounting and numbers because that's not how I work. So
yeah, it's important work and it's important to be accurate in those positions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. That's where you need to have for team, right? Everybody having different strengths and weaknesses and coming together.
Yeah. I think the key is really to find the things that make people come alive. And so if you can see that within your team and can see them get excited about it, it goes a long way.
Well, and that makes me think of too, like, praying the prayer of like, Lord, show me the way you see this person. Show me the way you created them. Because that's going to give you insight in to their gifts and their callings and like what you're talking about, like what makes them come alive. You can get a higher perspective from God.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I just actually asked that question to the Lord about my husband.
Oh.
I'm like, show me his gifts in this area. And I was like, okay, wow. And then we had a conversation about some things we needed to figure out. And I could really, I could see it. And I wouldn't have gotten there on my own. I would have been like, oh, this is kind of like, this is where I shine. These aren't his talents. But like to see God's lens was like super beautiful.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So trust and flexibility are essential, but challenging in large organizations. So how do leaders balance trust, structure, and responsibility?
Oh, that's $1 million question.
Right.
So I think creating a structure where expectations are known, creating a culture where there's a high level of accountability and responsibility. So like I think of, I'll just in general talk about timekeeping and in general people punching a time clock, because I think most HR professionals know that that's just part of an average work day for workers. And, you know, there are employees that punch a time clock and they punch in when they walk in and they punch out when they walk out. And then there's the employees that like take advantage of it and, you know, maybe try to punch in from the parking lot on their phone, or they accidentally, you know, they took a longer lunch than they should have. And so then they say they missed a punch. And like, you know, like people can take advantage of things. Like you want to trust everybody. Mm-hmm. And like I said, you're going to have the few that will, I don't want to call it abuse the system, but like take advantage. Mm-hmm. But how can you create trust and flexibility within those groups when you do have people taking advantage? And I think it goes back to like, trust the many, manage the few. So really not putting systems and practices in because you're trying to catch people being bad. Mm-hmm. But when you do find that people are abusing or taking advantage of, then you're addressing those people and not like pushing out a policy to try to take care of one or two people who are taking advantage mm-hmm. of the system. So I think that's key. It's really, and it's easier to be flexible with people you trust. So mm-hmm. like, I know like working remotely is a big thing nowadays, especially after COVID. It's a lot of people want the flexibility and the freedom to work at home remotely. And you know, there are people in this world who will go home and work remotely and push out more work than they would have in the office. And there are people who go home remotely and maybe not be very productive and maybe get their laundry done and make a nice meal for their family. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not here to judge, but I think, and so how can you create that system that allows those people, you know, it's not every job is made to be performed remotely. Not every job can, and not every job should. We do need people, face-to-face interaction with people to serve people, and depending on what sector you're working in. But I think it is a blend of all of those things. It's mm-hmm. managing the few, really, but it's also creating systems and structures where people can be responsible and accountable. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, I think I like to be flexible when we're able to be. I do like to extend flexibility because I always think of like, would I want somebody to say no? Would I want to be able to do that? Would I be able to do that? I don't know. But specifically, like if you look at a team of people, you probably would say, well, that person's trustworthy, that person's not. And so then you have to kind of decide what does that look like for that team? Mm-hmm. But I think overall, it would be nice if we could just trust everybody to do their best work at all times. And that's really not going to happen. So that's a complex puzzle to solve.
It is. That's because humans are complex.
We are. And like I said, the majority of them are trustworthy. They deserve the flexibility. I think flexibility can be taken to an extreme mm-hmm. also. And so I think there's a kind of a fine line, because I do think there's a group, you know, there's obviously through the generational trends, you know, like what is it? Gen Xers? I don't know what they are now.
I think so.
You know, they're going to want like,
or Gen Z.
Yeah.
Something.
So the baby boomers probably did not.
Yeah, they were not working remotely.
They were not working remote.
No.
They were not hauling their big hard drive from their computer at their desk to their home at the end of the day. And I think flexibility goes both ways too. I want to say this because if you look at, I was just talking to my husband about this. I'm like, if you look at like when I had my kids, they're teens now, but it's like, well, I didn't bring a laptop home in the evenings, like, because I didn't have one. I had a hard drive underneath my desk and I didn't have a work cell phone. That slowly morphed over the years. I got a BlackBerry, if you remember those things.
Those were so cool.
And then it was like, oh, now I can look at my email, and which was exciting at first until you become a slave to it. I mean, if you allow that. But I think over time, like our workday has really like spilled outside of the office in general. And so, and sometimes there's still demands that go on the evenings. I think if you can be flexible with people, they will also be responsible and responsive to your needs, maybe when you need them outside of that standard workday. So it does work both for the employer and the employee when that can go both ways.
Yeah, it's definitely a give and take.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What does it look like to live out your faith at work in a way that's authentic and consistent without being performative or preachy?
So that's a great question. And I just wrote in my journal yesterday, you can't just do the spiritual thing, you need to become it. So you can't just share the message, you actually have to become the message. And so I think as the Lord purifies your heart, as he refines in you what needs refining, as all your prickly places, as he smooths those out, you're going to be able to live out your faith, and people are just going to experience it. You won't even need to say the words. They'll just experience the love of Jesus, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I just wrote the other day in my journal, I just said, you can't just do the spiritual thing, you have to become it. And so I think that's key. Like God is doing something in us. We can't just stand there and preach and deliver a message. We actually have to become the message. So the Lord will refine and purify every unclean thing in our hearts as we allow him, as we invite him in, and we will actually become the message. And like we were talking about earlier, you really don't really need to say the word. They will know just by the interaction with you. And I think Colossians 3 verse 12, it says, "Put on then as God chosen one, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other as the Lord has forgiven you, so that you must also forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony."
It's really good. It also makes me think of the word embodiment and how we're supposed to embody the word of God, which means we become the message. And so I think if you've never done a study on that, I highly recommend, like, what does it mean to embody the word? And we become it. And that speaks really loud. And like you said, you've used the phrase of like a prickly pear. It does. Like when we embody the word of God, it's going to rub off those rough edges. And it's another form of sanctification.
Right. Yeah.
So wrapping up, Jessie, for a leader or professional who knows they're avoiding a hard conversation right now, what encouragement would you have for them?
Well, I think we all are probably in some form or fashion, but I think my encouragement to that leader would be to find a safe person to actually maybe just confide in, share with what's going on, somebody who can help maybe lead, guide, and pray for you in that time. But then really like step back and begin with the end in mind. So what are you afraid of? What is the end goal? But what are you afraid of in delivering that message? I have just seen time and time and time again that leaders who will sit down and have those hard discussions, and my job as an HR professional is to come alongside of them, not do it for them, but come alongside of them and support them through that delivery, the follow-up, what that looks like. And I think for years, sometimes leaders just wanted to dump that on me. And I'm really tried to be like, I'm coming alongside of you. We can do this together, kind of as their cheerleader and support person. But time and time again, a hard message delivered, the end result, whether you're like, well, I either need them to like step up their performance, or I need them to, move out of the organization. Or I think when you're avoiding a hard conversation, it also sends the message that you're not paying attention and you're not watching. And I think, so for example, if you have an employee who, is missing a lot of time from work or is showing up late and you're just not saying anything, but maybe it keeps happening. And now you notice other people on the team are getting fed up. It tells the person who's missing all the time from work that they can keep missing work. There's no consequence. You're not really upset by it. But B, it also tells the other people on the team, it also actually, I think to some level you'll reduce the amount of respect you have from the other team members because they're watching this person get if you think of in a standard company, it's like that person gets away with everything. And it's like, when is somebody going to say something? And yeah, the conversation should be private, but there should be a corrected action or a corrected behavior if you're having a hard conversation. So I think one of the warnings that I would say is if you avoid a hard conversation, you will bear fruit. It won't be good fruit. If you have the hard conversation, it will be hard, but the outcome will either, so in that example, it will either lead to better attendance, or over time, it will lead to perhaps that person leaving the organization. And I think, sometimes they call that career counseling, or I think Mark Dieter Ding, he refers to it as lovingly set them free. But I think having those hard conversations, man, it's hard. Nobody wants to sit across from somebody that they work with every day or they see every day and deliver a hard message. But when it's the right thing to do, and that, you have to find a way to deliver that message with love and care and respect, and then follow up as you said you would. And so I think that will just build respect. I have watched leaders over the years have hard conversation after hard conversation, and it actually builds the respect of the organization. And then there are those who every time something gets hard and wonky, they're missing in action, or they take a vacation, or they can't be found, and that erodes trust quickly. So I think if you want to maintain that high level of trust and have your employees stay committed to the mission and the organization, you have, it's not an option.
Would you say that, have you found it to, I don't want to say it gets easier, but maybe have you found that your confidence in having hard conversation has grown over the years as you've had lots of opportunities to practice?
Yes. I remember being terrified early in my career, like, oh, this isn't going to go well. But I think one of the other tools that I've used with leaders is having a script, even just little prompts. This is what I'm going to say, because I think oftentimes the message can be short and sweet. And sometimes when we're nervous or we start talking more and more and we're saying things we shouldn't.
Right.
And so having a script, having actually role playing, thinking of how it could go, how it could not, definitely, like, if you're a believer, you should be praying before you walk into these hard conversations and just say, Lord, like, give me the words. Give me the words that will honor you, that will show respect and love for this person right now. And I don't know. I just see so many leaders cut themselves short and actually like shying away from that hard conversation. Think of your personal life, right?
Yep.
You don't want to have that hard conversation with your spouse or your friend or your parent. And sometimes, like, when you do, the relationship only gets stronger. It may not always go that great and it may be bumpy, but it doesn't, but having things out in the light and having things building off transparency is going to build the trust in the relationship. If there's truly like love and commitment within it.
Right. I think from my own experience of not being able to do conflict well, I can see how because I would wait, it just made situations worse. But if we can get into the habit of addressing things right away, then it doesn't give time for things to fester and build up. And then we create this narrative of what's going on or not going on, right? But if we can just go and talk to the person, it's really a disservice to not have hard conversations. And like you said, I think hard conversations, they do build trust. They do build intimacy. And honestly, you're showing that I care about you. I care so much that I'm actually going to bring this up because I want to know where you're coming from, or I know you can do better, or whatever the reason is. But I do think hard conversations is a way of like showing care to people.
Absolutely. And I think you can do it with that truth and love. And I mean, when people hear love in the workplace, they're like, what? But I think it's really just that nurture, caring about people as human beings and as a person, and knowing that they have a story too. But also when you deliver a message that's difficult, or you need to have that hard conversation, just stepping back and saying, what, if this was me, how would I want to be approached about it? That will go a long way.
Yeah, it will. Well, thank you, Jessie. This has been so good. And I know that this is going to really help bring some clarity to people, because I don't think anybody loves conflict. And but like we've talked about for almost this last hour, is like, it's a part of our life. And so we can learn how to steward it well. And like you said, show care, speak truth and love, and all those different things. So would you be willing to pray for the one that we were just talking about, who's avoiding that hard conversation right now? Or maybe it's an area they're listening. They're like, oh yeah, I actually avoid it at all costs. I need to get better at this. And they're going to start that journey of learning how to communicate well.
Absolutely. It would be my pleasure. So, Lord, we thank you. Thank you for this day and for this time that we've committed to speaking about the topic of conflict and care and accountability and responsibility and just leadership in the workplace. And we just lift up those leaders to you, Lord, who just need that extra dose of courage. That have a challenge or a puzzle or conflict in front of them, Lord, that they just need some courage to step up and step in. And I just pray, Lord, that you would give them courage, that they would come to you and say, Lord, help me. I don't know what to do, but you do, Lord. And so we just pray that they would seek your face, Jesus, what you have to say to them about the situation. I pray that they would ask for you to reveal your heart about the employee or the coworker or the family member that they need to confront. And I won't even say confront, Jesus. I would just say that they need to get into a dialogue with that may be a little bit more challenging. I just ask that you would show them a picture of that person's heart, that they could see that person the way that you see them, that they could step into their story for a moment. And then I pray that you would give them the wisdom and the clarity that they need. I pray that you would prepare them. I pray that you would prepare them mentally, physically, and emotionally for that conversation, that you would give them the words to speak, Jesus. And I guess bottom line, Lord, we just want them to come to you, because you can equip them for the conversation in a way that we can't equip ourselves. We can read all the books. We can know all of the strategies and approaches, Lord. But when we seek your heart and your wisdom, we're going to get the details. We're going to get the clarity, and we're going to be able to step up to the plate and have that hard conversation. I pray that this person or these people would begin with the end in mind. What is the goal of the conversation? And what is the approach they need to take? And then I pray, Lord, that they would schedule the time and that they would give themselves a deadline, and they would not put it off any longer, that they would commit to doing the hard things because it's the right thing. And so, Lord, we just lift up the listener now who needs this encouragement. We just pray for their boldness, their humility. We pray that they would walk in respect and honor. And so give them the courage, Lord, give them the words, and help them communicate in love and with care. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you so much, friend. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Kels.
Thank you for joining us on Faith at Work. We hope today's episode has inspired and equipped you to live out your faith in the workforce. Don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend, and join us next time as we continue to equip you on your journey of faith at work. Faith at Work brought to you by the Unity Foundation. Learn more at unityfoundation-alexandria.com.